I have made a lot of terrain over the years, and I've kept almost all of it. I do eventually give away or discard older pieces once I run out of space or, they're simply outshined by newer builds. I'm not sure how commission builders do it. I just want to keep everything, at least when it's fresh and new. Giving it away feels like giving away a child, but sometimes you just have to get over your fears and do things. You might know I spent the last year making my own tabletop game called Idols of Torment, which is available on Kickstarter now. To help drum up interest, I've reached out to a lot of friends and peers in the industry to make videos about it. The guys from Play on Tabletop will be making a slick gameplay video for me. I asked them because, they make the nicest battle report videos on YouTube, and they're fellow Canadians. But to pull this off, I'd need to very quickly get them some suitable terrain to properly showcase the game and the setting. This would require not only getting over my inhibition about giving things I've just made away, I'd also have to make them a full set of terrain in less than 24 hours to ship it to them in time. This would prove to be a very difficult task. But the best way to approach a difficult task with a fast deadline is to just jump right in and get her done. I figured out what the minimum amount of terrain pieces they'd need would be and got out bases for all of it. Having the bases would give me a guideline for building. Just fill up the bases. Thankfully, Dollarama has already started stocking Halloween decor, and I was able to pick up some nice, cool, big items that would quickly make a simple set of terrain look awesome. They had a bunch of really big skulls and these hands, which were absolutely perfect for the Echo. I quickly gathered an assortment of bits and minis that I could use to populate these bases, my necessary tools, and I got to work. These foam skulls were a godsend. They could be quickly cut with a hot wire tool, and even better, they weighed nothing at all. Perfect for a build that I would have to mail across the country. Normally with terrain for this game, I'll cover the bases with a lot of Sculptamold to give it some shape and texture, but I had shipping weight to consider and opted to avoid using it as it's very heavy. Instead, I used scrap chunks of foam to give the bases a variety of form. I also needed something to blend different textures together and something to protect all that foam. This is where a fantastic material, ready mixed grout, comes in handy. This is something that you can buy at a home building supply store or flooring store. It's an acrylic ready to use grout with sand in it, and it makes for a fantastic texture paste on terrain. It sticks to everything, it seals everything, gives it some grit, fills gaps, and it dries hard and flexible. And it dries really fast. In just a couple hours, it's ready to paint. You can buy it in a variety of colors, and this dark gray one is just perfect for terrain. Despite being in a hurry, these pieces needed a little bit more flair to properly set them in the Echo. One of the things we have as a part of the game pieces set are these unit markers, so that you can tell what your models are even if you're using third-party ones. We shaped them like candles so they could also be used to decorate your terrain, because candles are a fundamental part of the world it takes place in. And since these are available to 3D print as well as on the plastic sprues, you can create an endless supply of 3D printed ones to use to cover terrain, which is phenomenal. A little bit of super glue and sand locked all these delicate bits in place and blended them into the ground texture. It was time to paint. Before I paint, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, intotheam. They make awesome clothing, specifically t-shirts. They have a constantly updating line of neat graphic prints, as well as basic tees, which I highly recommend if you want something soft, comfy, and well-fitting that won't shrink in the wash. They also make great hats, their trucker hat being my new favorite daily wear. If you want to try out these vibrant printed shirts, you could just buy one, but you're better off making use of their bundle pricing, where you can get 3 graphic tees for just $60, or 3 basic tees for $49.95. And this pricing gets even better if you use the link in my description. Using that link is going to give you an additional 10% off of your order. Seriously, these shirts are comfy, they're so soft, and they're excellent for tall folks like myself. Awesome cut, awesome fit. Be sure to check out intotheam. I primed in black before moving on to a zenithal highlight, which would set me up to do a very simple paint job. Usually I'll do the color with inks, as they have a ton of vibrancy, saturation, and a nice translucent application. But I just got a bunch of speed paints from Army Painter, and I wanted to see how they would compare to inks. Well, first of all, I was happy to see that they worked in the airbrush out of the bottle with no thinning required. And honestly, the application was basically identical to using acrylic inks. I was really happy with them. I went with a simple 2-tone cool color palette, which was inspired a bit by the Idols of Torment art piece that Alex from 52 Minis just made. The tricky part would be painting object source lighting on all the candles. This is not something I'm very good at, and I had a lot of candles to paint and not very much time to do it. I used some Army Painter airbrush paint, which I've also recently just started using, and I really love it. My goal was to not overdo this effect. In the past, I've applied inks that were too vibrant, almost neon yellow, and done too much coverage, which looks weird. This time I was careful and applied more muted yellows and pinks, and kept their area of coverage much smaller. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. They were a little dull, so I gave the areas and the candles a coat of yellow contrast paint to bring up the saturation just a bit. Then some yellow on the flames with some tiny orange tips, and that would complete the look. Of course, it also needed the standard Echo Dry brushing of fog gray craft paint. I liked how the set looked, and I liked that it had more color than my pieces for the Echo usually do, but I felt they were a bit too colorful. I wanted to desaturate them a bit, but how the hell do you desaturate painted color? Like, there's no Photoshop slider for that. The best thing I could think to do was to take some thinned down black ink and give the lower areas a light filtering to reduce some of that color. I'm not sure that this was the best way to do it, but it was all I could think of at the time, and it seemed to get the job done. I was really pleased with how well these turned out. I had built and painted it in record time, probably doing the whole set in less than 6 hours of work if you remove drying times. This was a big win, but in a way it would also make it harder for me to part with. I love these big ass skulls covered in candles. I want to keep them for myself, but I can't. So I have to remind myself that they're going to serve a very important purpose for me, appearing on screen in a video to help promote my game. And I have to remember that I just built this set super fast, and it was easy. So if I want it for myself badly enough, all I have to do is set aside another couple hours and get it done again. Am I the only one that has such a hard time parting with things they've made? I feel this is like a bit of a character flaw, so I'm happy to be overcoming it here. And thanks to this game I've made, it's forced me to do all sorts of new things and get out of many comfort zones. The Kickstarter is live right now. It's a sweet game, and I hope you check it out and become one of the players in the community we are building around it. I'll have a link to the Kickstarter in the description so you can check it out. Now, on to my next fear, which will be making sure this set somehow gets mailed safe and sound to Vancouver without any breaks. Fingers crossed.